Are your business expenses playing hide and seek? With Uber for Business, the small spends that slip through the cracks, like rides and meals, go right where you need them. Because it integrates with leading expense platforms, you can say goodbye to surprise costs, missing dollars, or chasing receipts. Everything's track downable. Uber for Business. Make small steps that make a big impact. Learn more at uber.com/small steps.
Welcome to Sephora.
I'm looking for a perfume that's not too perfumey.
I got you.
Serum moisturizer or moisturizer serum.
Let's get into layering.
My concealer is making me look worse?
Sounds like the wrong shade. Let's get you matched.
There's only one store that really gets what you're going for. Get beauty from people who get beauty. Only at Sephora.
Hi,
Let's get you a basket.
As a sports fan, I have to confess. Sometimes the game gets kind of boring. That's when I unfold my Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 7 and use multi-window viewing on its large screen. Boring game? I'm checking out my fantasy baseball league at the same time. Score still 1-0? I'm replying to emails in the other window, scoring points with the boss. Semifinals finally getting exciting? I'm buying tickets to the finals and booking my flights. Can your phone do that?
The new Galaxy Z Fold 7. Get yours at Samsung.com.
Hello and welcome back, my fellow samurai, to the Ghost of Tsushima Yotei Gamecast. I'm your host, Andrew Zink, and I'm super excited to welcome you back for episode 20, Iki Island, main storyline, part 1. I can't believe we finally made it here. I'm so excited to talk about this DLC, the Iki Island DLC, and dive into the main story on it. So yeah, you know, the whole game, the whole time I was playing through Ghost of Tsushima, like I had the quest marker for Iki Island and I wanted to save it till the end, and I'm glad I did, because I think going to Iki Island after you've gotten all the mythic tales and techniques and leveled yourself up all the way is just really worth it, and it's a really cool DLC, so I'm super excited to talk about it. So in this episode, there's 9 main story quests in the Iki Island DLC. In this episode, we're going to dive into the first 4 of them. So we'll start with the very first one, which is a prerequisite for all of them, obviously. So the first one is called Journey into the Past. So you guys, like, if you've played it, you'll remember that once you get the DLC, you just kind of get a main storyline quest marker pop up, and it pops up in Toyotama, in the Toyotama region. So what you have to do is to start the quest, you have to go to the southern Toyotama region, and you have to, and it's in the Akashima prefecture, I'm pretty sure, and you have to go to a location called Drowned Man's Shore on the western coast of Toyotama. So just a quick heads up, and especially if you haven't played this yet and you're listening to this podcast, this is a partial point of no return quest. So, you know, like if you're going to go beat a game or something, sometimes they'll tell you, like, this is a point of no return. If there's anything else you want to do in the game, you should do it now because the game will end after this. And sometimes you can't go back at all. So in this case, that is true. Once you go to Iki Island, you can't come back to Tsushima until after you've finished, you know, the main storyline of the DLC. So that is something to consider before you head over. So yeah, all right. So you show up at Drowned Man's Shore and you ride towards this quest marker, and it leads you to this like small settlement on the coast. So you arrive to find a bunch of civilians in this like small settlement over here, and they're not doing well. I'll say that much. Like, something seems off. They're like, you know, grabbing at their head. They're calling out. They seem like sick somehow. And it's kind of a freaky atmosphere. When I did this quest, it was like sunny and daytime, but it was weirdly gray. And this location on the coast, it was marshy with a lot of barren trees around. So not the happiest vibes here. So what you do is you show up and you see that these civilians are hallucinating. They're really not doing well, and something's wrong. So your first quest is to do an investigation of the area to try to figure out what happens. So there is a Mongol yurt set up nearby. So if you go over to it, there's a couple things you can investigate and find in there. So what you can find is a new color of Mongol clothing and like a new color of canvas on the yurt, which is purple. So up until now, like you've seen the Mongols in Act 1, they've been dressed in red. The Mongols in Act 2 have been dressed in blue. The Mongols in Act 3, it's kind of been a combination of blue and yellow. You think you've seen yellow here and there, but you've definitely never seen purple before. You've never seen purple on their tents. You've never seen purple on their uniforms. So you see that there's like purple fabric all over the place. And so this kind of indicates to Jin that this is like an unidentified new tribe of Mongols that have shown up on the coast of Tsushima here. So you find the new color. You find a dead civilian, unfortunately, inside this yurt, who very gruesomely seems to have bled to death in a wooden restraint, where it's like her hands were tied behind her back with rope, and then it's this big wooden board that like you can close around someone's neck, so then it's like they're kind of like stuck on the ground with their head propped up. I have to say I've never seen it before, so I thought it was definitely interesting to see that. And so like just a gruesome scene there, and then you find this an altar. It's like this Mongol altar that's outside the yurt, and it seems like very ceremonial and religious somehow, but you don't know anything about it. So then at this moment, someone calls out to you and they say samurai, and then it's someone who says that they declare to Jin that the eagle is calling out for him, and they then start this shamanic chant. So then a group of Mongol soldiers appear, led by this shaman. So you then have to fight them. And, you know, so here's one thing. Before I started this DLC, I actually posted in, what was it? I think it was the Iki Island channel on the Ghost of Tsushima Discord server that I just said like, oh, does anyone have any tips or anything you want to mention before I play this? And people said always kill the shaman first. And I now understand why, because the shaman singing will give like buffs to the Mongol soldiers around them. And I think it's like more damage, more health, you know, and they call it bloodlust, but it's just like they just generally make them a lot stronger. So when the first group of Mongol soldiers rushed me, I actually just ran straight past them and just like took out the shaman real quick. So that makes it a lot easier. So then, yeah, you have to fight off the Mongols. There's only like 3 or 4 in the first wave. And after you clear that first wave, there's then a second wave and there's more. All in all, it's not that many. I mean, you encounter a lot of different guys throughout this game, and so this isn't too many relative to other scenes that you've played. So yeah, after you clear these Mongols, you speak to the surviving shaman afterwards, who's kind of like bleeding out on the ground. And he tells you that the eagle is going to lead her eagle tribe to Tsushima's shores from Iki Island, you know, before he dies from blood loss right there. And so then Jin gets this flashback that you've gotten a number of times throughout the main game. And it's this childhood memory of his father's death. And his father's name is Kazumasa. And it's this person killing his father, saying, "May your death benefit all beings." And I have to say, like, when you've gotten this flashback throughout the main game, you never really got that much context about, like, how Jin's father died, like, why, even who it was. Like, at one point, I think I remember them saying that it was, like, bandits or something, but you never really get anything more than that. And the whole thing they're saying, "May your death benefit all beings," like, that's kind of strangely ominous, you know? It's not really just like, you know, haha, I'm avenging my family or whatever, you're dead now. It's like, it sounds like there's more meaning to it somehow. And now that you're encountering this strange, ceremonial culture of this new tribe, it kind of lends more, it's making me think about that a lot more. So sometime later, after all this, like, it kind of cuts away, and then a cutscene starts where Yuna is arriving, and right away I was like, "Oh, a friendly face! Thank God!" Like that's what we need for this strange environment. So Jin then speaks to her about what happened, and he just tells her, like, these people seem to have been poisoned, something's not right with them, and she says that, and he tells her that, like, they came from Iki Island, from this tribe called the Eagle Tribe. And so Yuna says that Iki Island is full of raiders and criminals, and Jin tells her that his father died on Iki Island trying to pacify the island, and that the samurai retreated in defeat back to Tsushima after the death of his father, and the failure of this campaign to defeat the raiders and criminals of Iki Island. So all this is really interesting because we haven't heard anything about this, basically. This is the first we're ever hearing about any type of backstory that's specific about Kazumasa, and obviously this is the first we're hearing about Iki Island, and just that it's controlled by raiders and criminals, and it's essentially lawless as far as the samurai are concerned. So Jin basically decides to return to Iki Island to investigate the Eagle Tribe's presence. Yuna says that she's going to stay behind to help the civilian settlement there and just like take care of them. So while Jin is preparing for his journey, so there's a boat that's there, and there's a boat captain on the shore. And so you talk to this boat captain, and he says that he can take you over to Iki Island. So that's very convenient and handy to have. So when you talk to the boat captain and say, like, okay, I'm ready to go, this is the point that the player is warned that it says, like, you're about to begin a long series of tales, and this will challenge your skills as a warrior. If there's anything else you want to do before you leave Tsushima, you should do it now. So then whenever you're ready, Jin and your horse, which for me, that was Kage. Sora had passed away by now. Never forgiving Lord Shimura for that. Honestly, I think I did the kill Lord Shimura option, honestly, because of what happened to Sora. I was really, really upset to lose my horse at the end of Act 2. So, your next horse I named Kage, which is Shadow. So that's my horse for this. So yeah, you board the boat with your horse, and Jin says that his first destination is going to be his ancestral stronghold on Iki Island, Fort Sakai. So again, I was like, I feel like we're really going to get a lot of background on Jin's family and how he was raised and everything. And I was really excited for all this. So yeah, the boat captain warns you as you board the boat that there's been severe storms around Iki ever since the Mongol invasion began. But he says, like, I've sailed through it before and we should be okay. So you then start a cutscene where it's pretty short. Like, it shows the boat sailing off and, crossing this channel, which it is kind of a far sail. It's not like, obviously, you're not sailing to like a whole nother continent or anything, but it's not like within seeing distance of Tsushima. So Jin sights a large storm approaching after a little while, and then the cutscene moves kind of quick, where like lightning strikes the boat like right in front of you, and it turns into this super freaky scene where like suddenly the boat is basically going down, Jin's thrown into the water, you see your horse in the water. It basically looks like everybody's gonna drown, and it's like this crazy lightning storm, and it's just like super sudden, comes out of nowhere. And then it cuts to black. So yeah, kind of a crazy way to start off this DLC. So I really like this. I thought this was all really cool. So then Jin washes up on the shore of somewhere, and he has survived the shipwreck. And he's walking alone onto a beachside shore with the hope that your horse is alive too. And I don't know, like, this kind of makes me think of just like any pirate game you've played or something where, you've just been like to this type of environment before, where it's like you're coughing up water, your player's coughing up water, and you're like looking around, wondering where you are, seeing like shipwrecks around you, and just like abandoned materials and all this stuff, and you're just wondering, like, all right, like, what am I going to find at this place? So eventually, you take control of Jin, you can start moving. And as you start, like, moving along this coast, it's kind of foggy at first. It seems very foreboding. It's like you don't know what you're walking into, almost like it's like an abandoned, scary sort of island. Although it's not abandoned, but abandoned of a civilization. And so after you you then move through a seaside smuggling cave where you come across some leftover supplies. It's nothing like special. It's just regular supplies. And then there's like, just like chests, just a bunch of stuff that's been left behind in this old smuggling cave. So as you're walking through the cave, you then encounter this wooden barricade that you have to get through. And this was really cool. This is the point where they introduce you to a new mechanic in the game, which unfortunately is only in this DLC, but I'm hoping it'll be in Ghost of Yotei. I have a feeling it will. But so the new mechanic is that you have to use your grappling hook to catch onto a wooden barricade. You hold the right trigger to like throw it and latch it on. Then you hold the left trigger to pull the barricade down. And so then you basically do this, and then you then like see a bunch of sunlight shining through. And you can then go through this hole or this wall in the cave, and you come out onto this, not super high, but you're like on a small rock ledge with a view. And at this point, you have like officially reached Iki Island. You get this cool view of like a long beach that turns into a forest, and you can then see off in the distance a lighthouse is in view. You can see like a smoking, you can't tell if it's like a castle or a fort, but some sort of big structure off in the distance. Pretty sure that's Fort Sakai offhand. That's what I thought right away. And then, you get formally introduced to Iki Island. It pops up on your main screen. It shows you this is Iki Island, and it gives you like, just a quest name and an introduction to it. So you're now officially here. You've made it, and you're starting the DLC. And then, you then get a new Iki Island map, and there's like a really cool intro to it. And man, I really want to replay the whole game, honestly. But like, so when you open up your map, it shows you like Iki Island as this like really foggy place on your map, whereas like then the fog starts to lift a little bit, and it shows you that now this is your map. For now, you have Iki Island as your map, and it shows you that your legend status has reset, saying that the legend of the ghost has not yet reached Iki Island. So you're like basically restarting, that you have a separate legend status on Iki Island. I thought that was really cool. And then and the last thing I want to mention on this before we close out this first quest here is that Iki Island has two prefectures. It has a north prefecture and a south prefecture. So the northern prefecture is called Yahata, and the southern prefecture is called Gonora. So that's interesting, and it just gives you a sense of the size. Like it's definitely big, but it's not massive. It's not like huge, There's only two. They're definitely larger prefectures, but it's not like there's like 5 prefectures or anything like that. So, and that wraps up the first quest, the intro to the Iki Island DLC, Journey into the Past. And just that quest name, Journey into the Past, it's kind of cool. It's, and then Jin mentions this, but he says that he's like returning to Iki Island, which means he's been there before. So, and it is interesting that this quest, Journey into the Past, we are going to see like more about what happens to Jin on Iki Island and his father, and learn more about this samurai campaign that happened over there. So you then have 2 quests that get unlocked. They're called A Lost Friend, which is to find your horse. And then there's another quest called The Eagle's Cry, which is to reach Fort Sakai in Yahata Prefecture. So you can do either one of them first or second. You don't have to do one before the other. I think doing A Lost Friend and recovering your horse first is probably the most logical thing to do. I bet that most people probably do that, and that's what I did first. So we'll just start there. And a lost friend isn't a super long quest. So you start a lost friend by arriving to the wreckage of the boat that brought you to Iki Island. So when you set the quest, your quest marker will lead you to the wreckage on the shore, like kind of close to where you're starting off after you leave this smuggler's cave. So you arrive and do some investigation. So your horse, which again for me that was Kage. Kage is not there. You do find the captain of your boat, unfortunately, drowned nearby. Very sad. And then in the sand, you find Kage's tracks. So that's good. It means that your horse is alive. So then you start the quest officially here. So Jin then basically do this investigation where you're following the tracks, and you're like following it. Slowly you get off the beach. And so Jin recognizes what's called an even gait in the tracks, which indicates that your horse isn't injured. You then keep going and you start getting led off the beach and into a forest, which again is really cool. It's like, ooh, we're getting into the island itself. Really cool to see what's in the forested area. So then you find that your horse has stopped to graze, which again is good. It means your horse is alive and was hungry. And then you keep following the tracks uphill, deeper into the forest, until you find that Sora fell or rolled at some point in the grass, and you can kind of see some leftover materials or something that came off the saddle. So you're headed in the right direction. So eventually you follow the tracks further uphill. And then you eventually encounter a civilian. So the civilian's on the pathway up this hill, and there's a dead snake on the path in front of him. So the civilian then says, be quiet, don't say my name or they'll hear you. And then you say, what's going on? And he says that the Eagle Tribe has been hunting them on Iki Island, and he ran away and encountered this snake on the path. And then Jin says, oh, good job killing the snake. And he says, I didn't. The snake was killed by a horse that came out of nowhere and trampled this snake and ran that way. And so then right away you're like, oh, okay, that's probably my horse. So then, you end this conversation and you start heading uphill further into the island. And so then you don't have to run super far. You find a bunch of Mongol footprints on the path. And Jin deduces from this that the Mongols were surprised and gave chase to the horse. You keep going a little bit further, and you then find a dead Mongol with a broken skull from a horse's kick. So it's okay, this is, we're definitely getting warmer, that's for sure. So then you keep going up this path, and you come around a bend, and eventually you hear, combat sounds and horse sounds. And when you come around the bend, you then see a squad of Mongols, and you see your horse. And the Mongols are failing to capture your horse. They're trying, but it's just not working. And then you see an entire another squad of 6 or 7 Mongols comes running from way further up the hill to reinforce that first squad to capture the horse. And as the squad is running in, Jin says, oh, that's Kage. He needs my help. And then you see Kage plow through this squad of Mongols, and they very comically go flying off the path on the side of the road, just fly through them. And then Jin, again, very comically says, oh, or not. I guess Kage doesn't need my help. So it was a very funny scene. I actually did laugh out loud when I saw this. And so then, you have to clear all the Mongols there. Once again, recommend defeating the shaman first. Use your explosives, y'all. Shoot your explosive arrows. Throw your sticky bombs. Throw your black powder bombs. Take out these Mongols and get your horse back. So once you clear the Mongols...
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for the stay.
You head up the path further uphill, and you finally find your horse. And it's off the path on the side of the road, just like kind of hanging out. I have to say, I felt like the horse looked a little freaked out. And you have a really nice reunion with your horse, where you then mount up. And yeah, there's just like, it's very nice. Like Jin is giving some comforting words and just saying like, oh, I'm glad I found you. And so then you are then introduced to the second new mechanic of the DLC so far, which is after you mount your horse, the game then gives you a tutorial on how to use the horse charge, which is to basically hold down, just the L1, R1 buttons on your horse. And you can then charge through Mongol squads and just leave them behind like that. And I gotta say, I thought this was sick. This was such a cool mechanic to add in. It's just fun, it's comical, but it's also just like convenient. It's really cool. It just feels empowering to do, and it uses your resolve. But I thought that was perfect because I have excess resolve anyway. I don't have to heal a lot, and if you use the charms right and everything, like you can get health back a lot of other ways. So I oftentimes have played this game just with like full resolve and not having to use too much. So I think this was a very good use of it for them to introduce. So then, yeah, you get to practice it. Where you charge through like several groups of Mongols that are like running that they were like hearing all the commotion. They were running down the hill, and you charge through a bunch of Mongols. Then you keep going uphill. You're getting further and further into the island. At this point, you're getting far away from the shore. You're heading into the mainland of Iki, and you then arrive to like the top of this hill. And you then find this civilian that you saw before. You have to save him from a squad of Mongols who are holding him prisoner at this tree at the top of this hill with like a very nice view. So you get to the top of the hill. You have to clear a couple Mongols up there. There's not too many of them. I don't even think there was a shaman there, and it wasn't super hard. So after you clear the Mongols there, you then can rescue the civilian. And he very comically kind of says like, "Oh, thank you." And Jin says, "You're welcome." And he says, "Oh, I was thanking him." And he talks to the horse, but thanks to both of you. And then Jin tells Kage go to work and says that it is time to head out and go further into Iki Island. And that is the end of the quest. So yeah, it was kind of a short quest, but I love this quest. And again, a new game mechanic, super cool. And I have to say, one of the reasons I love this quest is I actually feel really bonded to my horse now going into this DLC. And I really like that, where it's like, oh, we went through something together, we lost each other, we found our way back to each other. We had like some funny scenes, we saved a person, had a journey, and now we're back and we're ready to go. And I just like that. I like feeling bonded to, my characters and my allies in games. I thought that was cool. All right, and now we got our horse back. Now we're ready. See, this is what I meant. Now we're ready. Now I want to head to Fort Sakai and do this next quest, the Eagle's Cry. So you have to reach Fort Sakai in Yahata Prefecture in the north. So you run uphill, and this is kind of what I mean. Like, if you start the Eagle's Cry right from when you start A Lost Friend, you just kind of run uphill for a while, like sort of from where you are. And then you're kind of like headed in the right direction already. So as you start like getting closer to Fort Sakai and you're running uphill, you will encounter several civilians running away. And this is like once you get really close, several civilians are running away and they're saying like, don't let them take us back. And they're pursued by this big squad of Mongols. So you then have to clear the Mongols. There is a shaman there. You want to take out the shaman first, stop that shamanic chanting, take the buffs away, clear out the Mongols. The civilians, once you clear the Mongols, they just run away and they just say like, thank you. And they just run. You don't really get any real dialogue or cutscene or anything. So then you continue up the hill, and eventually Fort Sakai like really comes into view. And Jin says, "There's Fort Sakai. It still stands, but it has fallen to the Mongols." So you then approach a wooden bridge that leads to an entrance to the fort that is adorned with this purple cloth, and there's a squad of Mongol guards at this. There's not really a gate, but it is like a fortified entrance where it's like, archers could be up on the walls. They're not really, and there's like, wooden walls there. So there's 2 guards out front. You can take them out as soon as you alert them. Another squad like runs out from inside, and they do come with another shaman. So you have to defeat the shaman. You have to defeat the guards. So here's something interesting. So for me, after you proceed past this part, you then can proceed through a lot of the fort, and there is like more you can do. You can like grapple across trees, you can kind of climb up rocks, and you can defeat more Mongols up until you get to this main camp where a scene happens, and I'll get to that in a second. But something I found out is that if at any point once you reach this first gate, if you like lose all your health and the Mongols beat you, then you'll get a cutscene of being knocked out. And then like the next part of the quest starts. So I didn't know this, because what happened for me is I played through the whole fort. I kept defeating everybody until you eventually arrive at this big real gate that you have to go through, where you enter a main camp, where then there's like tons of Mongols waiting for you, and it's a cutscene. And as you're about to engage them, Jin gets knocked out by flash bombs. And then you'll arrive at the same part as if you just got knocked out at the very beginning of arriving at Fort Sakai. So after you get like knocked out by either the flash bombs or by losing the fight early on, you start this cutscene where it's Jin being dragged on this wooden pole with an escort of Mongol Eagle guards towards this very ominous looking big Mongol war tent. And I have to say, once again, I just thought this was like so fantastically cool how they did this. At first, it's like showing Jin like, and you're seeing that he's being dragged, and then the camera goes behind him, and it's nighttime, and you're seeing like just fire from these big torches and these guards, and you're being carried towards this tent with this ominous looking eagle insignia on the entrance to it. And it honestly kind of reminded me of that scene in The Last of Us Part 2 where Abby is getting dragged by the Seraphites, and that was in the trailer as well. And it's just like it's in the dark, pouring rain, and they're carrying torches, and they're just like dragging her through the mud, and it looks really ominous and scary. And you think some bad stuff's really about to go down. And that's definitely how I felt when I was playing this. So then it cuts to black, and you get a cutscene. And so Jin then wakes up, and he's inside this Mongol war tent he was being dragged towards. And he's in one of those wooden prisoner restraints that we saw that woman who had passed away back at Drowned Man's Shore in Tsushima. So it shows you this metal eagle on like a metal fireplace. And it shows you Jin's sword on a stand. Jin starts waking up and looking around this tent. It's a well-adorned tent. It clearly looks like the location of the leader of the Eagle Tribe. And then eventually a ceremoniously robed figure with a kind of freaky-looking helmet walks out. And then Jin very like angrily calls her the eagle. He asks, "Oh, are you the eagle?" And then she's not saying anything back. And he says, "Oh, I killed your scouts on Tsushima. Khotun Khan is dead. His army is defeated." And then Jin actually lies, and he says 1,000 samurai will join him on the shores of Iki tomorrow. And he says that she should surrender, and they'll spare her. So I thought that was interesting that, again, Jin is willing to bend the code a little bit in telling a lie. So at this point, the eagle takes off her helmet and sets it down, and then she gets a bowl of this drink from this big boiling pot in the room. And she starts talking to Jin, and she has this very kind of freaky, confident, sort of low, deep voice. And she's saying that his journey must have been hard, and she offers him a drink. And so Jin says, there's easier ways to kill me. And then she says, well, I never harm my guests. And then she motions to one of the guards to hold Jin's head back so he's forced to drink. And she then makes him drink this drink that she pulled from this pot. So this is kind of the first moment you get a good look at her. And this is it. She is the eagle. This is the person that you've been looking for. So it's kind of a middle-aged woman. She could be like slightly older than middle-aged. She has gray hair and she has one gray eye. So it definitely makes her look, sort of like she has some sort of strange spiritual aura about her. And so then she says that she gave Jin her sacred medicine and that he should save his strength because this is the easy part. And right away I was like, oh God, this is going to be not great. And if they gave Jin the same stuff that they gave some of the other civilians you've come across, that is not great news. So then Jin very defiantly says that she won't break him. And she says that he was broken long ago. Very foreboding. And she then says she releases his spirit to travel the underworld and face the judgment of his ancestors. So, yeah, pretty freaky. So then it cuts to black, and Jin sees that same flashback of his father again. And so then Jin wakes up, and he sees Yuna. So it's daytime, but you're inside the same tent. And right away, I was suspicious. I was just like, oh, God, this is probably not going to be good. And so he says, as soon as he sees Yuna, he says, I told you not to come. And she says that she took the first ship she could find. Jin kind of starts like retching because like he almost is going to throw up because he's been poisoned. And he tells Yuna, I've been poisoned. And so Yuna says, okay, we should set out to find you a healer. So we should go. So then you recover your equipment from a chest, and you just like go to a chest and get all your stuff out, and then you have your katana back and everything else. So you start following Yuna through this camp, and right away, when you walk out of the war tent, everything looks really strange. Like the outside looks strange, and it's like there's this surreal sort of fantasy game filter that's been like put over everything, and everything looks like weirdly bright. Like it looks almost like cheery, but like so bright and cheery that it somehow feels wrong and like something's off. So you're then walking through this fort. You're walking through Fort Sakai, and Jin tells Yuna that his father built Fort Sakai. So this is all news to us, the player. I loved hearing this. And Yuna asks him, and Yuna says, oh, well, is there anybody else fighting back? And have you gathered any allies? And Jin says no. And he says that Iki Island resents Clan Sakai because of his father. So then you eventually go through a gate that you pass through, and Yuna asks and says, well, when are the other samurai going to get here? And Jin is kind of confused, and he says, like, other samurai, I didn't tell anybody else, not even Lord Shimura. And I think he remembers that he kind of like told her that, and she saw that before they left. So then Yuna asks if his father was killed at Fort Sakai, and he says no, that they were ambushed in the canyons. And so Yuna confirms that Jin was with his father when he died. So I have to say right away, I actually I obviously didn't think this was real because I didn't think Yuna was actually there. I thought something was happening with like Jin's hallucinations or something. But it didn't stand out to me, the questions that she was asking, until I was like, starting to record this episode, and I was like realizing that all these questions were kind of suspicious. So eventually you arrive at the main courtyard area where you got flash bombed if you made it that far. And then Jin says, like, oh, there's a ravine on the far side of this courtyard and we can escape from there. So you start heading towards it. And in this courtyard, there's a lot of crows. There's like the freaky crow squawking that's happening. So again, it's just setting up this atmosphere of like, things feel strange. Like you definitely don't feel like you're in a good place. So then you cross the courtyard. Oh, and the courtyard's abandoned. There's no one there. Like the whole camp is just empty. So again, I'm just like, I mean, where did everyone go? Like this is all actually happening. Like where? There was an army of Mongols here when I last came through here, and now everyone's just gone. So you cross the courtyard. There's no one there. You don't have to sneak. You don't really have to do anything. You just cross it, and you then reach this ravine where the Mongols have constructed this sort of wooden walkway along the edge of the ravine, and then there's like a walkway that proceeds out over the ravine that you can walk on. So then you're like standing out on a ledge or like imagine like think of like a plank. If you like walked a plank to jump off a ship, it's like that, but it's like been built out a little more than that. So the edge of this wooden walkway is covered in blood. And again, right away, it's like, ooh, something seems weird. This does not seem like a good spot. So then right as you get to the ravine, a cutscene starts. And Jin approaches the edge of the ravine and looks in. And then this is kind of the first moment where Yuna very ominously asks, like, I felt like you could hear her tone, her voice, like, change a tiny bit. And she says, what do you see? And there's, like, this very noticeable intensity in it. And then it shows you, the camera pans over this ravine. And there's, like, it's like this massive pit. And there's just this, the pit is just full, chock full of bodies. Just corpses all thrown and dead in this pit, with flies everywhere. And then you see Kazumasa kneeling on top of all the bodies. And he's looking up at Jin. And Jin, like, in a very disturbed, freaked out sort of way, he, like, says, "Father?" And then his father, like, very angrily, like, says to Jin, like, "Why didn't you help me?" And then he says, you let him kill me. And Jin is not doing okay. Like, obviously, I mean, this is a really freaky sort of scene. And so then the camera kind of like looks at Jin's face, but you can see Yuna behind him. And Yuna then says, "You saw your father die." And as Yuna starts talking, her voice starts getting layered. And like really freaky. And layered meaning like you hear her voice, but then you also start hearing other voices overlapping it at the same time. Very freaky effect. And Jin realizes something is wrong. Yuna then turns into the eagle, and you realize that Jin has been hallucinating Yuna this whole time. Yuna is the eagle, and she says that she is opening Jin's mind with the visions, and that the visions are just the beginning. And she says that without her help, the fear and guilt will overwhelm him. So he should accept her help to lead him through the horror, as she has done for all her shamans. And then they will all tame this island together and finish what his father started, to finish the raiders of Iki Island and avenge his father. So again, we've seen this before with Khotun Khan and some of the other people that Jin encounters, where they're very clearly trying to manipulate Jin. They're trying different angles to see how they can like convince him to join them or, not resist them. And then Jin basically just says no, and he like seems to jump off the ravine, like he falls into it and jumps off of it, and then it cuts to black. So just a quick side note, I thought I was loving all this. It was definitely freaky, but I thought it was so well done. I was like so fascinated to see where this is going, what's happening. Really, really just loving everything in this DLC so far. So then you wake up and you're young Jin, and you wake up in this incredibly freaky, scary, dark canyon with like a black shimmery floor. Clearly not real life. Like this is like the worst bad trip that anyone's ever had, like literally. So you're playing as young Jin, and you hear Kazumasa's voice like booming over this whole canyon, and like asking for help, crying for help, and then you have to start running through the canyon. So all you do is you just kind of run straight. So as you're running, like there's this purple like atmosphere over everything. Like the sky is dark, the floor is dark. You're just like you're running through a canyon, surrounded by cliff walls. And then the eagle's voice like starts talking over everything. And it says to Jin, like, poor boy, lost his father and has lost his soul. And you keep running through the canyon. Very freaky. So then you start seeing shadows of Kazumasa on the wall. And you get more voices of Kazumasa, and the eagle is just taunting Jin. And, you know, young Jin then says that, like, after Kazumasa died, they sailed home with his body, and that he wished he'd drowned on Iki Island. And it's, like, this very serious moment where you're, like, getting a glimpse into Jin's mind when he was young, all of which is, like, super fascinating, but also sad. And so then as you keep running along through this canyon, and you know, you're like taking turns going left, right, like, but just still going through the canyon, you keep hearing more voices from Kazumasa. You hit this point where you see him kneeling, but you just run past him. And then you hear the eagle again, and the eagle says, you know, everything you do tarnishes the Sakai name. So then you hit this point where you're kind of reaching the end of this hallucination, where you have to start running through these hanging ropes of like pink flowers. And if it wasn't such a freaky environment, I actually think this is very beautiful. But then the ropes of pink flowers eventually turn into hanging bodies, which is very freaky and disturbing. And so then like young Jin is just running through these hanging bodies in these canyon. And so then you see Kazumasa at the end, like, of this spot you're running through. And then Kazumasa says, keep running, Jin, we're almost there. And you turn left, and then you see, like, a light at the end of this canyon. And then you run through the final part of the canyon, following Kazumasa. You reach the end, and you have to press the right trigger to squeeze through, like you're squeezing through a, like a cliff wall. And then you squeeze through the cliff wall, and it's like this big, bright, like almost like you're like leaving the vault for the first time and Fallout sort of thing. And then you see, all you see is Kazumasa on his knees, like super close up, with his throat just being like cut open by like presumably a bandit or a raider, like right in front of Jin. And then like it shows Jin's face just looking horrified. And then the camera like pans up to the person who you just saw cut Kazumasa's throat. And it shows the face of this like older looking raider named Tenzo. And now this is real. Now Tenzo is a real person in real life. He has gray hair. And then you like kind of start to see that Jin is now in a real place, and there's a dead Mongol shaman there. And so Tenzo just killed this Mongol shaman. And then as the camera pans up on Tenzo's face, Jin looks up, and Tenzo looks down at Jin, and he says, "You all right?" I have to say, I busted out laughing when this happened. Because this was a moment where I was like, no, I'm not all right. And just the way they introduced this, where it was just this guy who was just like, yo, you good? And I was like, I'm for sure not good right now. So then Jin starts to wake up for real a little bit. And the raider, this guy Tenzo, he says the eagle's close, but he knows somewhere safe, so they need to head out quick. So then you do, and then it cuts to a new scene. And it shows Jin waking up around a campfire in this like nice wooded alcove. And Tenzo says that he was letting Jin rest because he didn't look so good. And Jin is right away very aggravated. He stands up and he demands to know who this guy is. And he's very rude about it. And Tenzo says, you may be able to talk that way to people on Tsushima, but not here. And then Jin pulls out his sword and he says, I don't even know if you're real.
This episode is brought to you by ESPN. Catch the first WWE Premium Live event on ESPN, WrestlePalooza, live on Saturday, September 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. It's going to be an epic night in Indianapolis, featuring some of the biggest WWE superstars. This event is only on ESPN, so go to stream.espn.com and sign up to the ESPN app today for your all-access pass to WrestlePalooza and all WWE Premium Live events.
Hello, Nigel here. As an owl, I love to be awake all night, but allergy sufferers like you probably don't feel the same. So take Zysol at night to relieve allergies while you sleep. Then wake up fully refreshed for a more productive day. Zysol works fast and offers 24-hour continuous relief from sneezing, runny nose, itchy watery eyes, and itchy nose and throat, so you can enjoy doing the things you love all day long. Be Wisol. Take Zysol at night. Use as directed. Starts working in 45 minutes.
And Tenzo says, like, well, why don't you find out if I'm real? And he like starts to like pull out his sword. And then Jin says, if you're real, you will remember who won the Battle of Cloud Forest. And Tenzo then says it rained for 2 weeks straight before that battle, and the flash floods killed both samurai and Highlanders alike. We all lost. And I felt I was really struck by this, and again fascinated to just learn more about this character. And so then Tenzo asks Jin, what is a samurai doing on Iki Island? And Jin says that the eagle sent a scouting party to Tsushima and that he has to stop her. So that's pretty much it. Jin says that he drank the poison, and Tenzo says, I've never seen someone still standing after drinking that, so that's new. And he proceeds to tell Jin that the Mongols arrived to Iki Island a few weeks ago and wiped out most of the raiders, but his crew are the last holdouts. So Jin offers to help, and the raider is kind of incredulous that a samurai would help raiders, and he says, a samurai helping raiders. And Jin then introduces himself as Jin from Yarikawa, because he can't say he's a Sakai, or else he thinks they'll turn on him. So Tenzo then says that he's skeptical of Jin because he's not sure if Jin can actually fight off the eagle's poison. So Tenzo says to meet him at a farmhouse on the western coast if the eagle's poison doesn't break him first. And he says that he's going to be rescuing more survivors, and that's where you can meet him. And that is the end of the quest. So that wraps it up. I have to say, I mean, I loved where this was going. I mean, a part of this was freaky, and that's the thing, like, in Ghost of Tsushima, I never feel like the game is actually scary enough that you really feel, like, terrified, but there are moments where things are edgy and kind of trippy and a little freaky, and I just think it adds something really cool. And so far, it's like, you know, we're now encountering this more intimidating spiritual religious tribe of the Mongolians. We've now encountered one of the raiders, you know, someone who like is starting to give a little more insight into like the history of the samurai and the raider campaign that happened decades in the past. So all in all, I was just loving the direction of this. And we'll now start on the final quest for this episode of the podcast. So the fourth quest is called A Raider's Return. So you have to do this one next. So you then meet Tenzo in Yahata Prefecture on the western coast. So you arrive to this farmstead. Actually, before I say this, I just want to say, you have to, this is kind of, I would say this is one of the first times you have to then like explore a lot of Iki, and you have to ride through a lot of it to travel to this farmstead. And along the way, as you're just playing out in the open world, you'll keep getting these hallucinations and visions, and they're really freaky. And I think they're really cool, but really freaky too. So once you arrive to start this quest, you arrive to this farmstead, and it's been burned down, unfortunately. You see dead bodies around. Tenzo is standing next to some bodies, and they've been covered with goza mats. So when you talk to him, he says that friends of his lived on this farm and that he hoped to recruit them to help fight the Mongols, but that the Mongols got there first and killed them all. Very sad and unfortunate. So Jin then offers to help him bury them, and Tenzo says, like, they had this really nice moment of bonding where Tenzo says, no, you don't have to do that, and Jin says, I know, but I want to. And he says, okay, take a spade. And then the quest officially starts. So again, I really like this. It's like Jin is showing that he's like experienced loss too, and he's had to bury people too, and you know, it sucks to have to do it alone. So you know, you wanna do it with someone to help. So yeah, the quest begins, and then like, you know, it kind of, the scene cuts and the bodies have been buried, and Tenzo is saying, may they find peace in the next life. Jin is surprised that Tenzo is religious, and he asks, so then Jin asks if Tenzo will take him to his crew. And Tenzo wants to know if the poison is still affecting Jin. Very good question to ask. And Jin says it is, but that he's fine. So Tenzo says okay, and you start riding out for an old raider stronghold that Tenzo is saying they used to hide from the samurai. So Tenzo says that he's worried about taking Jin there because he's not sure how the raiders are going to respond to seeing a samurai, but that they need every fighter they can find. So along the way you're riding, and Tenzo references the Sakai invasion, and Jin is kind of hesitant. He says like, oh, like that's what you guys call it. And Tenzo then refers to Kazumasa as the butcher of Iki, and talks about how the samurai wanted to bring law and order, but, you know, we showed them, and he laughs a little bit, but then says like, but, you know, we lost a lot of good people in that fight. And then you get a dialogue choice. And the dialogue choice is watch what you say, or both sides were to blame. So I said both sides were to blame. I mean, the problem is I don't know enough about, like, we don't know that much about this situation so far. Like, all we know is that, like, you know, the samurai consider Iki lawless, and they wanted to like pacify it. So I chose both sides were to blame because I wanted to hear that more. So if you choose that option, Jin says that from what he heard, neither side was innocent, and Tenzo says that there is some truth to that, and that he's never seen a pretty war. So all in all, like, yeah, there's not that much that comes out of this dialogue, but that's what's said. And so then eventually you start approaching a hidden entrance to the stronghold, but the Mongols have found it, so you have to clear them first. There's a shaman there, you know, and it's kind of cool. This is the first time you're like really fighting with Tenzo by your side. So yeah, you clear the Mongols, and then after you clear them, you talk to Tenzo at this caved-in door entrance. So it's like a spot that you can tell it almost looks like a spot where it went underground. It was like a door that started to lead underground, but it's like covered with big rocks. Like it's totally caved in. And Tenzo says that this blocked entrance is Fune's doing. And he says that they block the entrances to their home if they're discovered, and they'll kill any witnesses if the entrances are discovered as well. But there's an old path by the sea that they might be able to use. So then you start heading out for this cliffside path. And as you start heading out, you get a hallucination of the eagle saying, and it's really well done. You're walking behind Tenzo, and it's the eagle saying, how many samurai has this man killed? Remember your father's attendant? His throat was opened while he slept, and his blood sprayed your tent. And I was like, this is brutal. Oh my God. And so then Jin literally says out loud, silent. And Tenzo is like, hey, you good? and Jin says that it's like he can hear his own thoughts, things that he didn't know he was thinking, but it's in the eagle's voice. But he tells Tenzo that he's okay. So then you continue walking for a little while. It's not too far. And you arrive at this beautiful view of the ocean with like this huge, like long area of white cliffs. And then you see like there's these wooden walkways that start to traverse the cliffs. So these are called the Shattered Cliffs, and you can hear seagulls, and you're like seeing like bright white sandy beaches, the whole ocean, and these like white cliffs. It's a really very idyllic sort of spot. So then you start making your way down these wooden walkways along the cliff until you arrive at this blocked off spot. And this is like the same as what you've encountered so far, where it's blocked off by a wooden barrier. So you have to use your grappling hook to grab onto the wooden barrier and then pull it down. So then it's a bridge. So then a bridge comes down. You can cross the bridge with Tenzo, easy peasy. And then you arrive at this next spot where you try to pull it down, but the anchor on the bridge like falls off. So then you have to climb around the side of the bridge to make it work. So what you do is you like hop on this wooden post, then you can climb some stones and you like climb them on the side of the cliffs. And then eventually you can get around on the side and you can drop the bridge down for Tenzo from that side. Not super hard. So once you proceed from there, you proceed along the cliffs and you start to like really start to head down, like you like made it past the cliffs. And you start to like come closer to the actual shore of the ocean. And then you see this big Mongol ship with the eagle insignia on the sails. And you see a raider ship trying to escape out to sea, and it's coming under fire from the Mongol ship. And you see the Mongol ship just like obliterate it at sea. So kind of just like a crazy scene to witness from the coast. And Tenzo says like, damn, I know them. And that it makes 4 craft that they've lost to the Eagle's warship so far. So definitely interesting. We're starting to get like, an insight into this conflict and everything. So then you keep going and you eventually like hop down from the cliff and you're now going through a seaside cave. You're kind of like definitively at ground level on the shore. So you're going through a seaside cave. You have to pull a wooden barrier open. And as you start walking through this cave, you start talking with Tenzo, and he says that he met Fune at the Sakai Inn, which is what they call Fort Sakai. And Tenzo is bantering about it, but what he basically is saying is that they were prisoners at Fort Sakai during the war, and that he says that like he and Fune survived, but that a lot of the other prisoners at Fort Sakai did not, which means like they were killed by the samurai, led by Jin's father. So obviously you're starting to, like, I really am loving this story because you're seeing that like Tenzo and Jin like are kind of at an awkward, like they have an awkward relationship with each other where they've been on very opposite sides of life and on this conflict, and you're starting to like really see that come out. So you eventually get to the back of this seaside cave. You squeeze through the final cave wall and you come out onto a beach that leads up a small hill to a wooden gate. And then at this point, as you're heading towards the gate, you get another hallucination where the eagle is saying that Tenzo is leading you to a den of murdering thieves just as they killed your father. And again, it's like her voice is so freaky and ominous as she's saying all this. So then you arrive at the gate and Tenzo basically tells Jin to be careful. And he says, like, don't get me in trouble. Follow my lead, keep your weapon sheathed. Like, I don't know how you're going to be received. You got to be careful. And Jin says, like, okay, I'll follow your lead. I'm not going to cause problems. So you open the gate with Tenzo. When you go through, you're greeted by some guards. And they ask immediately, they're like, Tenzo, who is this samurai? And Tenzo says that he's going to tell Fune about it. So then the guards say to Jin, like, I'm keeping my eye on you. So then you have arrived at this stronghold. And as you start walking through, you see that it's like sheltered in the cliffs. There's no way in other than through the gate. It's a very good hideout to have. You see how they managed to hide from the samurai during the old campaign. There's like some structures kind of like built into the cliffs, and there's like a spot to launch boats from. There's wooden walkways and such. Doesn't seem like a bad place to be, honestly. And so as you're walking, Tenzo is basically telling you how fierce Fune is. And so Fune is very clearly the leader of this raider band. And he says that Fune has left people to drown at high tide and that she hung a traitor from the mast of her ship. So you better be careful, is basically what he's saying. So then you actually pass like some sick people who have the hallucination poison and such. And Jin is like very sympathetic, and he says like, man, like, you know, so you guys are taking care of all of them. And Tenzo says, yeah. So it's showing that clearly like the raiders are not like totally evil people. I mean, they're trying to care for people in their stronghold. And then you see that Tenzo has given up his house as shelter for some of the sick people. So it's just showing you that, you know, he's clearly like, you know, and this is what they like to do in this game, and I really like this. I mean, these raiders are not just like, you know, mindless barbarians. Like, you know, Tenzo is clearly a thoughtful person who has kindness and is trying to show kindness to people, and you're seeing that. I have a lot more I'm going to say about the raiders. So then eventually, you know, you pass the sick people, and you then arrive to like the back of this cove of the stronghold, and you're approaching this headquarters. You see Fune is watching and waiting from a balcony. She yells down to Tenzo, you know, and then you have to go up to the second floor via ladder, and you finally speak with her. So Fune is suspicious right away. And, you know, she wants to know what Jin's deal is. And Jin tells her that the Mongols have invaded Tsushima too, and that they need to defeat the Eagle together, and that he feels like, you know, he's here to help them defeat the Eagle so that they can't make it to Tsushima. And so Fune asked Tenzo, like, what do you think about this? And Tenzo says, well, look, either Jin will help us or he'll die skewered by a Mongol spear. So it's basically a win-win either way. And Jin kind of gives him this look, but it's just like, yeah, I mean, look, like, whatever. Just let him say what he has to right here. And so Fune then says, all right, Jin's all good. If he wants to help us fight, let's send him out there, whatever. So she then proceeds to say that their next plan is to wait for a storm and attack the Mongol warship with everything they have. Jin tells her that it's a bad idea because you're attacking it head on, and that if they could get him aboard the ship, that he could sink it. And Tenzo says that Jin might be right because there's a Mongol boat from Iki that resupplies that big warship out on the sea every few days. So then they definitively make a plan to seize the supply ship and use it to get to the main warship. Fune gives Tenzo a dozen men for the task. Tenzo says that they can find the supply ship on the north side of the island at a small there's like a small inlet with steep cliffs, and he says to meet him there. And so then Jin turns to Fune and says, Fune, it's been a pleasure. And she just like scoffs at Jin and says, watch your step, samurai. And yeah, it's kind of comical. And that is the end of the quest. So and once you end the quest, you get the charm of abundant reserves, and that gives twice as much ammo from pickup. So I think that's actually pretty cool. And then and now you've unlocked the stronghold, so that's cool. There's a mythic tale. It's called the Tale of Blackhand Rizo that you can start in the stronghold. I'm gonna do that in a different episode, that mythic tale, but I did it and it was cool. And yeah, now you can just like walk around and explore the stronghold freely, and it's a cool place. I actually really liked the stronghold. I thought it was designed really well, and I wish there were more people to talk to, honestly, but it was kind of cool to see. Yeah, so that wraps up the first, I would say like it's about the first half of the main storyline in the DLC. And yeah, you know, I have a lot I want to say on the Raiders. I think I'm going to save it for the next episode, but, you know, I just want to say I've loved this DLC so far. Like, I think they're introducing really cool stuff. They're introducing Jin's background, you know, they're telling you more about Jin's father. They're giving you a glimpse into, like, Jin's childhood, the effect of losing his father. They're showing you, like, this cool new faction of the Mongols. They're showing you more political and social dynamics between the samurai and, the people who live on Iki Island. You're seeing new environments. The hallucination aspect is so fascinating and cool, I'm finding on this. So yeah, all in all, I'm loving this DLC so far. That's all I got for this episode. Hey, I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on the DLC. You can join the Robots Radio Discord channel or the Discord server, and you can join the Ghost of Tsushima Yotei channel in there, and hey, we can talk. And reach out to us on Blue Sky, send us an email, whatever you want. Leave us a 5-star review on the Apple Podcast Store or Spotify. All the links to all of that are in the show notes of the show. So that is all I got for you. Thanks for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And I would say, if anyone is trying to get you to drink some sort of hallucination concoction, well, I would definitely suggest you don't do that if you at all have any other option.
That's the sound of the fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron and the quiet confidence of ultra-smooth handling. The elevated interior reminds you this is more than an EV. This is electric performance redefined.
Your sausage McMuffin with egg didn't change. Your receipt did. The sausage McMuffin with egg extra value meal includes a hash brown and a small coffee for just $5. Only at McDonald's for a limited time.
Prices and participation may vary.